Now we will dive into how the Montana Common Core Standards prepares our students for college and career success. To hear from Susan Pimentel, a lead writer on the English Language Arts and Literacy Standards for the Common Core State Standards Initiative, and David Coleman, an English Language Arts team coordinator for the Common Core State Standards Initiative, regarding the key changes in the Common Core Standards and their research for doing so, please follow the link to the 6-minute, 24-second video at this link here. We are going to spend 20 minutes doing a hands-on activity, Name the Standards, offered from Achieve the Core. In this activity, you will gain a deeper understanding of the ELA and Literacy Anchor Standards. Closely read and name the ELA and Literacy Anchor Standards with a 1 to 5 word phrase, thus providing an opportunity to become familiar with the content of the standards. Record your work on the Name the Standards handout. Begin with the reading strand and continue with the writing, speaking, and listening and language strands as time permits. You will work individually and share your answers in the discussion forum. Read each of the reading anchor standards and name the standard with a 1 to 5 word phrase. In the discussion forum, reach consensus about the most precise name for each of the standards. Discuss your findings within the larger discussion forum. Please pause the video and spend 20 minutes doing this activity and then responding with your answer choices in the discussion forum. The descriptions that follow are not standards themselves, but instead offer a portrait of students who meet the standards set out in this document. As students advance through the grades and master the standards in reading, writing, speaking, listening, and language, they are able to exhibit with increasing fullness and regularity the capacities of the literate individual. Students who are college and career ready demonstrate independence. They build strong content knowledge. They respond to varying demands of audience, task, purpose, and discipline. They comprehend as well as critique. They value evidence. They use technology and digital media strategically and capably. They come to understand other perspectives and cultures. These are some of the examples of what abilities and skills are important for collegiate and workforce success. The Common Core represents a positive reform in education that focuses on preparing students for college and workforce success by using fewer, higher, and clearer standards than we have previously had. Good instruction came before the Common Core, and good instruction will come after. What we want you to see is that good instruction matches the Montana Common Core Standards, and when we are using the best practices, we align to the Montana Common Core Standards. In order to do that, we need to become a bit more familiar with the standards themselves. With the shared responsibility for school-wide literacy, it is strongly encouraged to facilitate a comprehensive school-wide literacy program for all content areas K-12. The ELA and the content area literacy components are critical to college and career readiness, but they do not define the whole of such readiness, nor the content-specific expectations of other non-English language arts disciplines. Students require a wide-ranging, rigorous academic preparation. The Common Core state standards were written with backwards design, that is, they stated with what a student should be able to know and do upon graduation or to be successful in college and a career. Therefore, they are college and career anchors. While the standards delineate specific expectations in reading, writing, speaking, listening, and language, each standard needs to be a separate focus for instruction and assessment. Often several standards can be addressed by a single rich task. For example, when editing writing, students address writing standard, develop and strengthen writing as needed by planning, revising, editing, rewriting, or trying a new approach, as well as Language Standards 1, which deal with the conventions of standard English and the knowledge of language. When drawing evidence from literary and informational texts per Writing Standard 9, students are demonstrating their comprehension skill in relation to specific standards in reading. When discussing something they have read or written, students are also demonstrating their speaking and listening skills. The college and career ready anchor standards themselves provide another source of focus and coherence. The same 10 college and career ready anchor standards for reading apply to both literary and informational text, including texts in history, social studies, science, and technical subjects. The 10 college and career anchor standards for writing cover numerous text types and subject areas. This means that students can develop mutually reinforcing skills and exhibit mastery of standards for reading and writing across a range of texts and classrooms. So what are the shifts? Shift 1. Balancing informational and literary texts. In the words borrowed from David Coleman in his Bringing the Common Core to Life 2011 New York presentation, he mentions, Dr. Steiner has been an early proponent of this research that in kindergarten through 5th grade, the general knowledge that you develop in these years plays a crucial predictive role in not only your performance in those disciplines like science and history, but your ability to read more complex text itself. So the core standards for the first time demand that 50% of text that students encounter in kindergarten through 5th grade is informational text, meaning primarily text about science and history, text about the arts, text through which students learn about the world. That's the first shift, 50-50 informational text and literary text in K through 5, requiring both the standards and assessments that measure them. So for shift 1, what does the student do and what does the teacher do? The student builds content knowledge, whereas the teacher is offering a balance of informational and literary text. Shift 2, knowledge in the disciplines. David Coleman states, Shift 2 demands that the standards do not request that the building of knowledge through reading text plays a fundamental role in those disciplines. In history and social studies, the analysis of primary and secondary documents is a core part of building knowledge. Content area teachers outside the English Language Arts classroom emphasize literacy experiences in their planning and instruction. Students learn through domain-specific texts in science and social studies classrooms. Rather than referring to the text, they are expected to learn from what they have read. Staircase of complexity. The third shift is that text complexity matters. The difficulty or complexity of what you're reading plays the guiding role in guiding literacy performance rather than the skills by which you are reading it. But for the first time, these core standards create a staircase of complexity, of the expectations year by year of the level of text complexity you need to master. And what we found by research is the research that demonstrates that the level of text that kids are reading today in high school is systematically beneath what they need to be able to do to be college and career ready. In order to prepare students for the complexity of college and career ready texts, each grade level requires a step of growth on the staircase. Students read the central grade, appropriate text around which instruction is centered. Teachers are patient, create more time and space in the curriculum for those close and careful reading, and provide appropriate and necessary scaffolding to support what is possible for students reading below grade level. Shift 4, text-based answers. The fourth shift in literacy is a shift towards focusing on questions that require you to pay attention to the text itself. These could be called text-dependent questions. So what's happened in reading instruction, despite our intentions, is an enormous amount of the time spent with these questions that hover around text but don't require the close consideration of the text. Students have rich and rigorous conversations which are dependent on a common text. Teachers should insist that classroom experiences stay deeply connected to the text on the page and that students develop habits for making evidentiary arguments, both in conversation as well as in writing, to assess the comprehension of the text. Shift 5, writing from sources. Can you make an argument with evidence? Is there something verifiable behind what you're saying, or what you think or feel that you can demonstrate to me? Writing needs to emphasize the use of evidence to inform or make an argument rather than the personal narrative or other forms of decontextualized prompts. While the narrative still has an important role, students develop skills through written arguments that respond to the ideas, events, facts, and arguments presented in the text they read. And Shift 6, academic vocabulary. It is academic vocabulary, the true language of power, and that is particularly true for our English language learners. This replaces the unstated language of power in earlier literacy standards, which were basically the buildup of thousands of literary terms. The core object of study must be the academic vocabulary that pervades complex texts of all types. These are words like appearance or consequential or deliberate. Unlike what are sometimes called Tier 3 or domain-specific words like cell wall or amoeba, they are very rarely bolded on the side of the page to help guide you. They are an underlying language of complexity that pervades everything complex you read. You can imagine they build a wall around these texts that many of our students cannot penetrate. So what the core standards do is focus their attention while not sacrificing the literary. In short, The standards can be summed up by saying they require you to read like a detective and write like an investigative reporter. So as we just went through the original 6 Common Core shifts, we now have all of these 6 shifts condensed into 3 key shifts, often referred simply as informational text, text complexity, and evidence. As we go through this presentation, we are going to look first at how we can think critically about the text itself. This pertains to the first 2 shifts and involves questions like, what type of text is this? What are the demands of this text, and what demands are being placed on the reader? Then we will look at shift 3 and think critically about how students respond to the text, where we look at question types and how questions ask students to use their evidence in their response.